just this morning that I was asked the question by a mum, why is it that everything in her 5-month-old child's life goes straight into their mouth? Guys, we're still hitting on some of these frequently asked questions that I'm receiving in practice about this age group of kids under the age of 12 months. And by far, this is one of the more entertaining. Why is it that any child, probably aged between 5 through to about 6-7 months, is going to put everything they come across straight into the mouth? There are two major reasons for this. One in particular is that the mouth and lips are the single biggest sensory input to the brain. In other words, kids put things into their mouth because they're trying to figure out what the fudge that thing is. So if it's my reflex hammer, if it's their shoes, if it's a towel, if it's the dummy, if it's a fork, if it's a lid, if it's some Tupperware, if it's even getting into the dirt, the sand, and the grass, they will stick it into their mouth because that is the biggest input to their brain to let them know what it is that they are dealing with as they start to compute the world around them. The second most common thing that will go into their mouth by far will be their hands. And again, it's the sensory input. They're starting to communicate between their hands and their brain. They're starting to communicate that they have two hands. They're starting to communicate they have dexterity and fine motor control and movement of these things that constantly is giving them input to their little brains. They're forming not only sensory pathways, but also motor pathways. So that's why they're picking things up, looking at it, drooling all over it, sticking it in their mouth, pulling it out, etc. One of the single most important developmental milestones, developmental patterns that they will develop is when they bring their two hands to the middle of their body and then ultimately up into their mouth. What that is all about is actually them starting to understand that they have two sides of their body. So we talk about the midline of the body. So when they start to bring their hands to the center, they're starting to use both sides of their brain at the same time and communicating between the left and right side of their body. Obviously, from a lot of motor patterns, movement patterns, this is absolutely critical. You'll tend to notice kids start to bring their hands to the midline, they start to clap, they start to put them in their mouths. Will be around the time that they're starting to move, develop more advanced movement patterns. One of the most important will be something like rolling. A coordinated, controlled roll typically occurs around that 6 to 7 month bracket. We know developmentally that if a child rolls correctly, we know that it is highly likely that they are going to crawl correctly. We know if their child crawls correctly, we know that they are highly likely to be able to develop independent gait, aka walking. So guys, that's it. That's why they bring everything to their mouth. That's why their hands are of such fascination to them at this age group. Is firstly, it's a massive sensory stimulation to the brain. Secondly, it's starting to demonstrate a communication between left and right sides of the body and starting as a precursor to be able to develop those more advanced movement patterns that are going to come, particularly in that second 6-month block of life and development where they start to become a hell of a lot more mobile. I'm sure I will be asked a question about some of those mobilities, some of that rolling, some of that crawling. When I do, I'll be sure to give you guys an answer as well. Keep warm, keep safe, and I'll see you soon.